we can use Desmos to help us solve absolute value inequalities. Similarly to our equations, we would put the left side in the first box, the right side in the second box. In the third box, though, we would put the whole thing. Now remember, we can't graph C in Desmos. Desmos doesn't understand that, so we have to use X instead. And on the right side, where we have just a number, we'd want to put Y equals in front of that. So it would look something like this. You notice the color coding pops up to show us that our first box is going to be graphed in red, our second in blue, and the whole thing in green. So let's take a look at the graph it shows us. Here we see that it is shaded in two separate places. If there are two shaded parts, that's an OR compound inequality. I see I have an intersection here where X is -7 and another intersection at 17. So those are the numbers I'm going to look at. Let's look at -7 first. I'm going to write X and -7, and I'm going to leave a space in the middle for my symbol. Now, if I look at that left side and where it's shaded, if I'm looking at where it goes off of the screen, it's going towards the left. If I were to draw an arrow showing the direction it's shaded in, that's going to match my inequality symbol. And you notice we have a dotted line in the graph, and in our original inequality, we have no line underneath, which means we're not going to have a line underneath it down here either. And it matches the direction of that arrow that I drew on the shaded part. Now, on our right side, I'm going to write X and 17, and I'm going to leave a space in the middle. If we look at where it's shaded, if we were to draw an arrow here at the end of the X-axis, where it is shading in that direction off the screen, our inequality symbol is going to match that. So it's also going to be pointed towards the right. Let's go back to our original question. We found our answer. So C has to be less than -7 or greater than 17. To put this on the number line, I'm going to draw an open circle at -7. And then, since my inequality symbol is pointed towards the left, that's also the direction I'm going to go on the number line. For C is greater than 17, I have an open circle at 17. And that arrow is pointed towards the right, so that's also the direction I'm going to go on my number line. Let's try one more. Here, we have which best represents the graph of 2 times the absolute value of 2x minus 1 is less than or equal to 10. And we've got 4 graphed number lines here. So let's take a look. We're going to put this one in Desmos just like we did the last one, with the left side in the first box, the right side in the second box, the whole thing in the third box. And it's going to look something like this. Once again, we have our color coding. So once we have that put in Desmos, our graph, it will come up for us. And you see here, we've got one shaded section that is in between the two intersections. When it is shaded in between, that is an AND compound inequality. Here we have solid lines for the green shaded area, solid lines on either boundary. And if you notice here in our third box, the inequality symbol we used was less than or equal to. So we're going to have that line underneath our symbols. Since X is in between, I'm going to write it out like this. And I see my intersections at -2 for X and 3 for X. And those numbers are going to come down on either side. -2 is the smallest, 3 is the largest, and X is in between the two. So we know now that X has to be in between or equal to -2 and 3. Because I know that it's in between, I can mark out B and D, because those are not shaded in between those points on the number line. I can also see that I have a closed circle, which means I can mark out A and circle C. So our number line would look like C. Closed circles at -2 and 3, and the number line shaded in between. That's all for our absolute value inequalities. Let's practice a little bit together before we move on to practicing on our own.